Hello, hello. Good evening, and welcome to Pion's Tuesday Talk series. We are here. We are having tonight music in our soul, and our discussion will be the topic of music. But in dealing with music, we're going to be discussing some things in detail. Some of the things that we're going to be discussing in detail will deal with some of the social justice issues that we've had recently, and it will also deal with the reason that we appreciate Black church women in the church, the reason that we think of that foundation when we think about our Black church women. And so I just want to give a little brief synopsis of that. But before we do, I just want to give a quick prayer and thank God in the name of Jesus. Right now, if we could just bow our heads. Lord, thank you for just this evening, for the opportunity to share a good word, a good message, and a rich discussion, God. We ask that you have your way in the discussion and bless all of our guest panelists and to have your will that thy will be done and that someone will be touched by what we say on this evening and feel a need to go out and do well in the kingdom. In your mighty name and matchless name, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So, just a brief synopsis of what we're doing this evening. The significance of the Bread Pion Music in Our Souls webinar is directly connected to the overwhelming gratitude of the Pan African church mothers, aunties, sisters, basically the original sis. These women consistently make sure the youth are learning and that something is spiritually and vital in their age range is great expectancy and empowerment for each child, each different child, each alike child, all children, because we help discover those determined gifts. These women of God make sure that the children are fed spiritually, physically, and in any other way that's deemed divine and necessary for positive growth. This is very much a Pan African tradition directly connected to the tribal connection of the griot. And as young adults, we are all witnesses in our own youth. As feminists and womanists, visionaries at work in leadership within committees, various ministries, and even a growing number of pastoral roles. Our Sunday schools, our youth choir directors. It's a proactive energy and a positive morale and demeanor that is often carried over in school settings, communities, and other types of social conscious organizations and events. And so on tonight, we'll be touching on just a lot of things in a rich discussion of what is important for remembering Black church women, what is important for defending Black church women, and what is important for making sure that the legend behind what a Black church woman does stands the test of time, because it still does. And so on this evening, we have our guest panelists with us, and I'm so excited just to have them here because it is a wonderful time in this season to just have the people that we have on. They have been there are seasons at this point. We're all seasoned. But even deeper than that, what they're doing has been something that they've done all their lives. They're not really just doing it for the money. They're not doing it for the show, even if it is a show. It is a ministry, and they have defined themselves as ministers in their own rights, whether they're ordained or not. They give of their gifts. Even deeper than them giving of their gifts, they encourage others. And so on this evening, we are just so excited to have our guest panelists here. And I cannot say how excited I am just to have the people that we have on this evening. And so I just want to give a brief little bit about who they are. Patrick D. McCoy is the board member of the Music Critics Association of North America. He's a freelance writer with numerous notable publications, such as the Washington Post, the Afro American newspaper, CBS Washington, and even the Examiner, and even more than that, actually. He is a choral conductor. I have been in his choirs, several of them. He is an adjunct professor of music at Virginia State University. I'm also a Trojan at VSU. He is a singer. Oh, I wish you could hear him sing on this evening, but I won't call him out. And you should hear him play the organ. I actually saw a picture. I was being nosy the other day, and I saw the picture where he posted an organ that looked like one that he had in his childhood that his mother lifted up in him. And so I just am looking forward to hearing what he has to say. He is a young man, a young adult who was very close with his mom, still lifts her up totally in life. But even deeper than that, he has always been a feminist for Black women and also Black choral and Black classical artists. And so we're looking forward to hearing from him on this evening. How you doing today, Patrick?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so happy that you're here. So happy. I want to make sure I go through all my guests, and we're coming back. We're going to start with Patrick right after these messages. Minister Angela Jones. Minister Angela Jones is the director of arts at Duke Ellington School of the Arts, and she is a vocalist and an activist. She is a native Washingtonian. She has a full body legacy of being a young influencer in generations for the arts and business and mentorship. She's a sought after singer, writer, producer, and activist. She's charmed masses of persons with her gift and voice. She received her master's from Howard University School of Divinity, and she also works with various national and I believe international as well initiatives. She produces local and national performing projects and symposiums. She works with national organizations and institutions. She's sung with such artists as Richard Smallwood, Yolanda Adams, B.B. Winans, Margaret Sapp, the list goes on. She recently was part of a huge release with the gospel group with Brandon Camper and One Way. And you can definitely check out some of those gorgeous photos and wonderful, amazing songs that they released around the Christmas season. She's even worked at venues such as the Kennedy Center and the Walter E. Washington Convention Center. So we are just so excited to have Miss Angela Jones, Minister Angela Jones, with us on this evening. Welcome, Angela.
God bless you. Thank you for the invite.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for accepting. Thank you for accepting. And then we have Minister Rickdrieka Saunders. Minister Rickdrieka Saunders came to us by way of Bread for the World. She was a feature speaker during our February series where she spoke about Black women. She spoke about the importance of farming and nurturing, but even more important, she gave a dynamic sermon on the importance of being a church, not just a church mother, but even deeper than that, a spiritual mother. And she touched on such things that we just had to have her on here. I'm blessed to know her. I'm getting to know her better. And so we're just looking forward to hearing from her because whenever she speaks, and I've checked her out, I stalked her a little bit, she speaks from her heart and she speaks from her spirit. So wherever the Lord leads her on this evening, we are excited about that. We are excited about that. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Reverend Saunders. Thank you again.
Thank you as well for the invitation.
Oh, I'm so excited. It's my pleasure to have you on. I can't tell you how important it is just to make sure that we have all the parts covered on this evening because I don't want to wear too many people out on their sections of what they need to say. So we're happy that you're making sure we get all of our spirit filled in there. We are actually filled with ministers on here. We have another minister coming up next. Her name is Minister Ryane Nickens. She is the founder and president of the Trayvon Center. It is a 501c3 nonprofit that serves underserved youth and their families who suffer from trauma due to neighborhood gun violence. And so the Trayvon Center offers arts therapy, education pods, Black authors, reading series, relative holistic resources through consistent bonding and the community trust. Even more recently, the Trayvon Center which started out in Ward 8, has now been granted a DC grant to expand to wards 5 and 7 this year. And so there has been a strong impact. Ryane is a HBCU graduate, also a Washingtonian. She is a graduate of Howard University School of Divinity. She's very driven in social justice events and advocacy. She's spoken with some of the greats out there, some still here and some not. She is graced in a humble way, in the most humble way, her own story to build others to be a part of the community. So she is on the ministerial staff at the historic Metropolitan AME Church in Washington, D.C. And we are just looking forward to hearing from you on this evening. Thank you for joining us today, Minister Ryane.
Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you all here. So let's get started. Now, it's going to be a little different this evening. Usually, what we would have is an opportunity for persons to just go back and forth and have dialogue. But in between the dialogue throughout today, because this is a music music dialogue, we want to show some different clips that deal with some of the topics that we are going to touch on. So I will be going throughout, and you will hear persons speak about their testimonials related to the topics we're discussing. And then they're also going to be directed with some questions with videos. So our first person I wanted to direct a question to is Patrick D. McCoy. And so Patrick, how are you doing again this evening? Are you doing okay over there?
I am well. Thank you so much. Surrounded by all this Black excellence. So I'm
Oh,
excited.
yes, thank you for coming. One of the reasons I invited Patrick is because he knows how to set an atmosphere. He set my atmosphere my freshman year in college, my first day of school, my first recital. His was his, and he had on all white. So I made it my business to wear all white in my senior recital too. You know, I'm just blessed that he is just here to join us on this evening. Patrick, could you tell us, um, you are just the thing that that sticks out to me and my own mother is how much you have a love, not only for your mom, but how you treat other women the same way that you treated your mother. And so I've noticed all of those things just be a part of your career overall. And so I just wanted you to kind of share your testimony with us this evening.
Well, again, Sesheida, thank you, especially for inviting me, and to all of the other esteemed panelists. It's just an honor again to be here with you tonight. Um, you know that my mother, for those who don't know me personally, you know, it's still kind of a very soft spot. My mother passed in 2017, but I do want to go back to the wonderful segue that Sesheida set up in the beginning when she talked about this organ that I posted. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
When I was a young child, me and my friends were out playing, and I wish I had a picture of it right now because that core organ is like a little small, little dilapidated little organ. It had like a half keyboard and these chord buttons.
Oh
But
my.
this version that I found all those years ago, it was thrown away in a dumpster, and I salvaged it out of the dumpster. And so when I salvaged that thing out of the dumpster, I brought it home. And I mean, this thing had broken keys, everything. It was nothing like the organ that I just found the other day at the vintage store. This organ was tore up from the floor. I mean, it was like, oh my goodness, it was just truly tore up. And so when I brought it home, my mom was like, boy, what you doing bringing that junk in here? Da, 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 da. But my mother sang in the church choir at Unity Baptist Church there. This was not like a church that did a lot of anthems. This church was like knocked down, drag out kind of gospel. I mean, it was Hammond organ and everything was by ear. I would only learn to read music much later. And so my mother sang in the choir, and I would start picking up these songs on this dilapidated organ. And that's when my mother really tuned in the fact that I had a gift and really acknowledged that this little instrument that she saw in the beginning as junk was actually a treasure sent by God. And this was the thing that really evoked this deep relationship between my mother. You know, she would always practice these songs. And even though I wasn't a trained organist or I wasn't afforded piano lessons at that time or anything like that, I would play by ear all of the solos that she would sing with the choir. And one of the favorite solos that she would sing was a song. I don't know if it's really a hymn, but I think it's a hymn called "He Touched Me." That was probably one of her favorite things to sing as a solo. But going back, you know, to this theme of your panel, the church, and as I just mentioned, my mother was tied all through the church. Yes, she sang in the choir, but she was an usher. She taught Sunday school. She worked on the hospitality committee. She was on the pastor's aide. My mother was threaded all the way through the church, but I think that her heartbeat was definitely music and the choir. And so that love that was fostered by my mother, as you also lifted up, Sesheida, is definitely the way I treat women, because my mother, she just was, for me, a paragon of just holiness and spirituality and kindness. And just another piece about my mother that a lot of people don't know, but I do talk about it from time to time. You know, my mother is the reason why I got my first professional job. My mother was a custodian by profession over 30 years. cleaning school.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so when you're in a school system, I always tell people, because I taught school, and the first people you better learn to be good with is the custodian and the cafeteria workers. It's been times where I didn't, even though I was working at Good Job, I didn't have money to pay for the lunch, and one of the cafeteria ladies would help me, or if I need to get into a door, it would be the custodian. But the point I'm gonna make this, and I hope I'm not about to run out of time, because it's just so much when you talk about my mother and
Yes, I understand.
music and everything. So when I first graduated from Virginia State, I had no desire to teach public school. I said one of these days I want to be somewhere in the Kennedy Center or Carnegie and doing all these things, but that's not what happened. I wanted to be a great recitalist because I love recitals, and it was my goal to be a recitalist. But my mother was a custodian at Peabody Middle School, but get this, Peabody was my middle school where I attended. And so she was in there cleaning the cafeteria, and the principal, Gail P. Alexander, was talking to her, and she was just like, oh my goodness, I need a music teacher. And my mother was like, I know just the person.
There it is.
And so Miss Alexander invited me in for an interview, but this is the full circle moment. This is why you always treat people well. Miss Alexander was my 8th grade civics teacher at that middle school. So to come full circle that she's now my mother's supervisor, and my mother was the entree for me to get that first professional job. It goes to show you that God will send somebody in the face of somebody who you least expected. And so that was a full circle moment for me. But I do want to go back just a little. Women have been so instrumental in my life. You know, yes, I mentioned my mother, but of course my sister also had a singing voice, but she went on a different path as far as her career. But my high school music teacher, Donna R. Lundy, she was the person in high school, even though I had an affinity for music, she was the one that really brought it out, because she was the one that prepared me for all my first major competitions. Oh my God. And Sesheida, you know, when you prepare for your audition at Virginia State, it was rigor like these students, I would say now, perhaps may not understand, because Miss Edmond, she was the choir director, and she still is, but she had a reputation for no nonsense, and she still does. But back then, you better come in with an aria. I remember that Miss Lundy, she prepared me for several competitions, and so when I auditioned at Virginia State, it was Where'er You Walk by Handel from Simile. And so that was my first piece. But I said all that to say it was my high school teacher that really laid that groundwork for me to be able to audition. So many people in my community. I mean, I would run this time up if I kept going. So y'all
you know what? We're going to cut you off right now, because you know what? If you like to listen to Patrick, let me tell you, Patrick has a Facebook Live, and he lives there. Okay. He will make you live in the morning. He will have his morning coffee there. So if you want to hear some more with Patrick, I encourage you to do so. Because sometimes I just chime in just because he's gonna bring you back to life. Everything that he said, it brings life to the person that you are on the inner, and it shines out. Patrick and I shared the same vocal instructor, Janella Edmonds, and he did not lie. You know, that lady, she'll make you cry, but she'll make you smile, and she'll defend you. She will never let you embarrass yourself. So I totally understand that.
One more thing about these great women. Anybody who knows me, these are all great women behind me, great opera singers, but everybody knows that Kathleen Battle is my life.
Yes.
So.
So I will share my screen now while I'm talking. I actually had decided that I wanted to share Jesse Norman, but only because Jesse Norman recently passed in 2019, and they loved each other. Clearly, you can see them right here. So I just want to share this short clip. Now, after this clip is over, Patrick, I'll give you about 30 seconds just because I gave you a little bit longer. And then Angela, because you are also a classically trained Black woman, church Black woman, we're going to get your comments as well. And then we'll lead into that part of the discussion. So I'm just going to play about a clip of this. This is a clip from the 1995 Kennedy Center Honors. Several of us have actually been a part of that, I know. And so I just want to play this clip where Jesse Norman is singing, and we are going to watch that.
Every day, just bright shining as the sun, with no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
All right. So I'm going to stop the share right there. I wanted to make sure that we saw those applause because it was serious. So Patrick, you have 30 seconds. Go.
I just want to say that her passing is still painful. I mean, it's such a loss to the classical music community in the world. But one of the greatest moments of my life was when I was writing for Washington Life magazine, and Washington Performing Arts honored her with a great award at the Hay Adams Hotel. And I was happy to be, I got there early, and in wafts Jesse Norman. And she stopped, and she was so gracious to me, and we took a photo with my phone. But my dear friend who was a photographer, he said, absolutely not. He said, you need a professional picture. And so we took a portrait together. And it's actually here on the wall. You can't, well, maybe you can see it, but oh shoot, you can't see it, but at some point. But anyway, it's a great portrait on the wall.
Yeah.
And I would never forget that moment. She was just so gracious, and everything you hear of her being regal and just grand in her stride and her carriage, it's all true. She's greatly missed.
Thank you, Patrick, for your input. Now, leading over to the incomparable, the minister, soloist, and can she sing? I said sing. Angela, Minister Angela. I saw you clapping. The first time I watched that clip, I clapped in the same place. What are your thoughts when you look at that? Look at that piece.
Soul. I think of soul stirring music. I think of my spirituality. I think of my faith. I think of emotion. I think of confidence. I think of impact. And I know you will ask me who my influences are, so I might as well just continue to talk.
Head on, head on. Go ahead.
But it makes me think of my foundation. Again, as a DC native, I grew up in a household of Word of Faith pastors. As my parents, I learned my faith ethics, morals, and values to which I uphold and stand true today from the leadership and the guidance and the pastorship and parenthoodness of Dr. Martha Jones and my now deceased father, Dr. Alvin Jones. But what I saw in my mother was leadership as a co-pastor, not just a first lady, but a co-pastor and overseer of many things that influenced the 80s and the 90s in what was then Chocolate City, through activism in eradicating homelessness and eradicating some issues with drug abuse, and servicing not only just our immediate church community, but also opening up and housing an Ethiopian and Hispanic church. She bridged the gap in a lot of different diverse communities within the DC area. I mean, we were in a coliseum very close to the Capitol, and what we were trying to do and what the ministry was trying to do, again, through the co-pastorship of a man and a woman, I saw my mother persevere in spite of what people just wanted her to do, was be feminine trophy wife, first lady. and she still preaches and teaches and proclaims the word of the Lord. And even when I think of back to musicianship, and hats off to all the things that Mr. McCoy does in his industry, connecting people. That man connects the folks, okay? Shares some
Yes.
similarities of where I garnered my musicianship outside of church, outside of a media company that my father started. My sister and I, Dr. Alicia Lola Jones, were exposed to a lot of cultural opportunities actually that were being housed at Metropolitan through the work of Washington Performing Arts Society's Children of the Gospel. We were able to start out with the pilot program. I think it was maybe 92, 93, led by local icons, Mr. Eric Terrain, where Richard Smallwood and other gospel greats were able to feature with the children's choir. But I learned from the likes of Evelyn Simpson Currington and Joyce Garrett, who had standard and poise. They were sweet, but they were serious and stern and uncompromising, like their male counterparts. And for those who may not know Evelyn Simpson Currington, she is a music genius, a composer, a pianist, a pipe organist. There's not a lot of pipe organists left sharing the world with us. A Black woman, right? Organist, vocalist, artistic director, a modest and beautiful being. But what people don't know through Children of the Gospel, yes, she wanted to pour into young generations, but she was still arranging music for the likes of Kathleen Battle and Jesse Norman and Denise Graves, and she's composed and arranged so many hymns and spiritual songs. And then when I think of Joyce Garrett, a pioneer of choral direction in the DC area, and has been internationally recognized through her work, yes, at the high school level, but also working with the Kennedy Center Honors for years and years, and just being an all-around exemplar for artistic excellence. I bring these two people up because as I learned from them and I matriculated into Duke Ellington School of the Arts, these were people that I knew at some point I can be like or learn from in order to be where I am today as an arts administrator. And I thank God through even my educational journey of the notable church mothers in the educational space, of Dr. Renee Harrison or Dr. Byron Gay and Dr. Velma Love, who influenced my vocational and career goals. Dr. Love was someone who pushed forward a project called Equipping the Saints when I was a student at Howard School of Divinity, and it challenged us to think through a wider lens and starting with healing ourselves. And though she is not a church mother, I want to lift forward
aunties and sisters.
The church, Debbie Allen, who is an artistic director, a creative philanthropist, producer, who as someone who watched her in the movie Fame at maybe the age of 9, 10 years old, I was super influenced by her, not only artistic beauty and rigor, but her business sense. She, when I was a student at Duke Ellington, she came and did master classes with us. And then I later continued to follow her journey and saw how well aligned she was to some of my future goals and what I've established now. And when I think of all the things that I've been able to accomplish, I cannot leave out my sister. And we often joke that she is the Felicia Rashad to what I have made myself to be, Debbie Allen. So
and go for it, and that's totally fine.
My one and only and older sister, Dr. Alicia Lola Jones, is also an inspiration to me in my perspective of faith and ministry in the public square. She's a professor at, an associate professor of folklore and ethnomusicology at the University of Indiana. She focuses on gender and sexuality, music industry, media, and arts entrepreneurship. And a recent author, want to plug her for her book, Flaming, the peculiar theopolitics of fire and desire and Black male gospel performance. Over the years, I've learned through our relationship and through our collaboration as not only sisters, but as business partners, how our parents have truly instilled in us to honor those of our past, present, and our future. And the programming that we put forward is honoring men and women in their fields and giftedness through the programming of Genius for Men and Move and Shake. And really, it is through all these experiences, and really the list goes on and on. If you think about it, over the span of the decades you are living, that for me, any person that I come in contact with has some sort of impact. And I think I'm just so grateful and blessed through those relationships and the conversations with my elders and the intergenerational conversations that I try to facilitate with the young people that I serve, so they know the importance of a well-rounded connectivity to society, to their industry, to where they see the world moving forward. Again, it is about the past, the present, and the future.
Thank you so much, Angela. I mean, didn't I tell you I was going to be a rich conversation? You thought I was playing. I am just in awe. I've known her for some years, but it's always something new I find out that just makes me just more intrigued with who she is. So I want to show this short clip, and I want to relate it to something because I've been hearing it echo throughout both of the persons that spoke as I get the next screen ready. We are doing pretty good on time, so I want to make sure that we still adhere to the time, but I wanted to play this little clip. It's dealing with Marian Anderson singing in front of the Lincoln Memorial. And so one of the reasons I chose this clip in particular is because this was 1939, April 9th, 1939, and it was Easter. And what you're going to see here is what you normally see at a protest. You would think if you didn't know anybody, you just saw the audience, you might think it's a picture of the March on Washington, but it's about 20, 30 years before that. And persons were there to advocate on behalf of a Black woman. And they give a little section in the beginning. So I'm just going to go ahead and press play. Once I get done pressing play and we listen to that, then we're going to hear from Reverend Rickdrieka, and then make sure that she is able to chime in on some of the holistic things we're seeing, the intergenerational connections of what happens when we let that Black woman and that Black church woman and that not just church mother, music mothers, because it's a spiritual mother type of situation. So I'm going to go ahead and play this short clip for you all.
The nation's most impressive Easter demonstration. 75,000 massed before Lincoln Memorial to hear Marian Anderson, colored contralto, make her capital debut at the great Emancipator Shrine. Refusal of the DAR to let her use their hall fanned a countrywide controversy, with this great gathering as the climax. The singer was invited by Secretary of the Interior, Nickens, who attends with Secretary of the Treasury, Morgenthau. Spectators include Supreme Court Justice Black, New York Senator Robert Wagner, and a host of notables, here to listen to the voice acclaimed by many as the finest in a century.
Just want you all to see that applause there. It was serious. And so, Rickdrieka, we have you on this evening because we want to touch a little bit on that spiritual, that nourishment. And so we've touched on the part of the spiritual nourishment, but now we want to touch a little bit on feeding hunger and hunger justice, and how statistically, as Black women, it is shown in studies that when women of color and their children are fed and taken care of, the community is taken care of. And so there's something to that. And we have you here on this evening just because you touched on so many different, you planted seeds. You planted seeds back in February, and they're starting to come out. And we want to hear a little bit more about how you can chime into the importance of being the Black church woman in the community. As Patrick lifted, his mother worked in certain areas in the school, and women do different things in the church. They're the planners, they're integrating the community, they make sure every child is fed, but they also encourage and inspire. So I want you just to share, if you can, just a little bit of the theological points and our discussion.
Ooh, well, there's a lot of good points. First and foremost, Patrick and Angela, I love you guys' feedback and testimony. And from that, I totally agree with what you guys are saying, because the reality of it is that the Black women wear multiple hats in the church. They have always worn multiple hats in the church. And our reality is that many times they don't get any kind of applause or any kind of accolades for what they're doing when they're giving their all and they're feeding everybody but themselves. And I think for us, if we step back to see and see where we have gotten to and reflect back on who helped us along the way, many times we will see that there was a woman helping us to our point of view or where we're going in that nature. One of the biggest things that I've noticed in my studies is that when we had more Black women in the forefront doing things, that there was a larger level of connectivity. And some kind of way, when we got more Black men in the forefront, the church, the academy, and the community became dismantled because there was not a nurturing environment that was still in play. And what I've known is for Black men, they're not as nurturing as the woman. The Black man is not going to hold that community piece together like a woman will. So in the Black church, we struggle with keeping that community foundation there, but it's not about power, but it's more about balance. And until we get to a point that we can be fully open to a level of balance in the Black church, there's going to constantly be a struggle that's going on. And what, from my experience growing up, like a lot of people used to ask me the question, did you ever struggle with men not accepting you as a minister? Did you ever struggle with this or that? And oftentimes I tell them no. And part of it has been because I've always had that support system. I always had that Black woman thrusting me forward and encouraging me to go to that next level on different levels of anything. Even growing up for me with my grandmother was a person who was big on service. My grandmother was a person who was big on community. My grandmother could be aching to have arthritis going on Sunday mornings, but just because she didn't go to church due to arthritis, everybody in that household was going to be at church on time. And then if you did something in church while she wasn't there, it would get back to her before church was out. And then she would get you and she would take you back to the church and you would correct their ways. So it's all about having that level of support, that level of connectivity within the Black church, and finding a level of balance so that we can grow spiritually in the church. Because I'll tell anybody, a lot of people look at the Black church, and so many Black churches are failing or losing numbers, but many of it is more so because of the fact that we're on life support. We're on life support because we're not nurturing that next generation to be active in the church. And we have to get more Black women in, nurturing our young adults, nurturing our next generations so that they'll be engaged in the church and can move forward and can continue the process of what we need in the Black community.
Oh my goodness. Didn't I tell y'all? Didn't I tell you we had the right one on? I'm in awe. I mean, pass the offering plate around now, okay? Get the economy back up because it is ready to go. Thank you for just sharing that. I can't even add to it. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next clip because it really made something rise up in me. And so with that being said, we're gonna go to our next clip relative to what has been shared in that marvelous word. I hope y'all enjoy this short clip, and I just want to prepare it for you. This was happening at the March for Our Lives rally. And so I picked this one because the youth planned this. There were 15, 16-year-olds that planned this. Some of the Duke Ellington students I know went and participated with permission. And if you see behind, look at some of their faces. They're so proud to be standing behind her. And she is there. She's a humble person. I had to skip ahead a little bit because you can tell she's a little teary-eyed in the beginning, so her voice is right there. So we're going to start around 25. And so I just want to acknowledge how important it is as young adults that we continue to give that influence and don't deny it. We have some artists that say, oh, I'm an adult. This music isn't for kids, but they're listening to it. They're looking at you. So just own up to it and know you're popular. You're loved. You're loved. And so I'm just going to show this short clip. And as we show the short clip, Reverend Rickdrieka, we'll give you maybe 30 seconds, and then we're going to lead into Ryane Nickens, Minister Ryane Nickens.
And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to his feet. Mountains, bring it to his feet. Mountains up, and our eyes like the day, our eyes unafraid, eyes up and not doing the valley. Time to get
All right, we'll stop it there. Reverend Rickdrieka, could you just chime in about 30 seconds for us and tell us your thoughts on that clip?
Oh, I love it. I'm an advocate for putting youth in positions at the earliest age possible. Like with a lot of churches, I currently help them to restructure their programs so that they can grow and re-engage youth and young adults in the ministry. So I tell them up front, what can you do so that they can be doing in church? What things can you allow them to do so that they can feel important and feel like you're not babying them and treating them like a child?
Yes, and it is very important, and young adults feel that way too now. So I am definitely grateful that you mentioned that. Minister Ryane Nickens. Now it is not by happenstance that I chose this song. I wanted you to touch a little bit on this song, and then if you could lead into your 5 minutes or so of the Trayvon Center and the purpose that maybe I led you into this song in particular.
Okay. Thank you again for having me. It's like going after these musicians, these great musicians, and the great theologian, clearly embracing everything you said and loving everything that all three of you said before me. I was there at the March for Our Lives. And when Audrey Day came out, that was my introduction to her. I had not heard of her until that day. But when she came out, there was a connection, and it was beautiful to see those beautiful Black babies up there taking ownership and just singing their little hearts out was beautiful. And so that's my work. That is the life work I did not choose, but the life work that was chosen for me by God, who I think can be a bully at times when it comes to vision and it comes to ministry and purpose. God can be a bit of a bully, because I told my therapist today, I don't believe in free will at all. I think it was just written there by somebody else. And God never said anything about a free will, because if we look at Jonah's life, that belly of the whale was real. And if we all know that we've been in that belly of the whale, well, when we said no to God, to whatever that purpose and that vision was, one of the people, another person I did not know until I got to Divinity School, Howard University Divinity School, was Fannie Lou Hamer. Did not know this giant of a woman, this theologian with no PhD, MS, MDiv, or whatever behind her name. But she sure enough is the greatest theologian I've ever come in contact with, because her words sustained my ministry. It helped me see it. It helped me build into it. And it helps me say yes to God each and every day. When I think about what she endured, the pain, when she was jailed and she had these two Black men have to beat her, and she knew what the stakes were, and she told them, just do it. And so she's got these two Black men, and she's got this white racist man beating her, and she doesn't yell for 5 minutes until 5 minutes into the beating is when she yells. And that was astounding all in itself. But what got me was the next day when she got up and sung that hymn.
Yes.
After a night when your body is in pain, when you have been humiliated for nothing but wanting your rights, what's just right, wanting to be a part of America that ceases to exist, that some folks put on paper when they stole land. They wrote up some documents for themselves, and then, it was only for them and their kind, and everybody else had to fight for it, and we're still fighting for it. But what she did the next day was it's just remarkable to me. So I feel like if after a physical beating, just for wanting to register folks to vote and get voters right, Fannie Lou Hamer could get up and start singing the praises of God in a weary and dry land. Who the hell am I with my little privileged self sometimes to not get up and say yes to God? And it gets hard. And it is hard even on a day where I woke up this morning, I went to bed last night with 3 women I have never met in my life on my mind. 2 were murdered and 1 was shot in a domestic incident. And thinking about Black women and how, as Brother Malcolm said, we are the least protected in the world. And thinking about these Black women and how nobody was there to protect them. Like, there's a system set up to destroy Black women, and Black men play a part in that system. Some Black men, not all Black men, but some Black men play a part in that, and how a Black man who is rejected took the lives of a mother and daughter. And thank God I had therapy this morning, because I shared that with my therapist. But to talk about this is the work that God called me to, this work of healing from trauma. And I just thought to God, when this became what God said do, I'm gonna be honest with you, good Christian people. I didn't grow up in church. You all did. So you all pray for me. Y'all connection may be a bit stronger than mine at times, but I told God, you done lost your damn mind.
We accept all.
You have lost your damn mind. If you think I'm gonna take all my painful moments and use those for somebody else's healing, that ain't gonna happen, bruh. So I'm gonna need you to figure something else out for me. But I wrestled and ultimately said yes, because that those things on my shoulders were too much for me to handle. And I knew the only way out was yes. And thank God that my yes brought joy.
Yeah, I agree. So many people,
the Trayvon Center, right?
Yeah.
Starting the Trayvon Center, it brought yes to healing Black women like that, Black women who've been hurt, healing, because like you said, if Black women are healed and healthy, the community is healed and healthy. The community's better when Black women are better, when Black women are given space and valued in real ways, and our kids grow up to be healthier. And so that is what I initially started out doing. And then I thought about our children. If you are familiar with the gun violence prevention movement, it is focused in on 15 to 35-year-old Black males, Black and brown males. That is their focus. If you look at any grant, any prevention material, it will always be 15 to 35-year-olds. But we have babies that are terrified, babies who can't go to sleep. If you look at the differences, if you're from DC, if you look at schools in Ward 3, and you look at schools in Ward 7 and 8, and some parts of 5, and you look at the social economics and the environmental stresses, that's the difference in the learning gap. That's the difference in children west of the river reading at 70 to 80%, and our babies reading well below 30%. Is those kids go to bed, I won't say happy, but they go to bed fed with most of their needs met. Our kids go to bed, whether they are hungry, some of them hungry, whether some of them have went to bed to gunshots.
Yes, yeah.
Whether they've had to outrun a bullet. That trauma, they wake up with, and they go to sleep with. And so I sought to create a space that wasn't there for me as a little girl growing up in Southeast DC. I created the space that I needed. I think I'm 2 minutes over. Okay, I'm all right. Thank you.
Well, what I will say with Ryane, go to the TrayronCenter.org, and that is spelled TRARON.org. And you will see a whole website. You can get in touch with Ryane. We're encouraging her to receive honorariums, but she's been doing this for free for several years. If you would like to get involved with the Trayvon Center, please connect with her or connect with someone through Kion or Bread for the World, and we'll make sure you're connected online. But definitely check out the TrayronCenter.org, because clearly it just wasn't enough time to cover everything. I just want to say, while we have a few minutes left, I'm going to close out with a clip. So I'm going to wrap this up. I would love to just thank everyone that was on the panel tonight. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Rickdrieka. And thank you, Ryane, for just being the persons that you are, the lights that you are. Thank you for sharing your moments of spirituality and of advocacy. I ask that you all go and check out the Bread for the World page. A lot of the conversation that we talked about tonight. Bread for the World are working on bills nationally and internationally to help persons with hunger situations, and partner with different organizations, propose certain bills, support certain bills, and we work across both lines. And so we just encourage you all to just continue to want to get involved, continue to be connected. And what we're going to do now, I want to close out with one clip. It'll go over and it'll probably go out, but I think that it is definitely worth just making sure we play this clip. I just want to give a quick prayer and thank you all so much. I am honored for tonight. Told y'all it was going to be a rich discussion. So the last clip that we're going to look at on this evening is called Freedom. It's from the movie Black Panther from 1995. And it is a chorus of Black women singing. So I wanted to make sure that we just continue to remember what we can do as a collective, because what we're doing is bigger than ourselves. Lord, right now, I just ask that you bless every panelist that was here, bless every person that tuned in tonight, bless the people that will see this in the future. Let them be led to be connected. Let them be led to be an instrument to you, God, in the way that you would have us to be. Let us be mindful of advocacy for our youth and advocacy for food hunger, gaining back our land, being those persons of nourishment, not just in a spiritual way, but in a physical way. We ask all of these wonderful things in your wonderful name, God. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So we're going to close out. I'm going to put back on my share screen and you all enjoy. Sorry we don't have time to comment on this, but I know you're going to like it. Please make sure guest panelists to put in the chat ways that persons can reach out to you, because you know you didn't finish everything and I know some people want to hear some more. Thank you.
White power for white people. No unity, no power. White power for white people. Black power for black people. 1967. The Black Panther Party. The movement. Freedom.
Let's talk about freedom.
We will not bow down to racism. We will not bow down to injustice. We will not bow down to exploitation. I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand.
Now this is time to clear your mind and your soul. Yo, our story has never been told. Ladies, you got to demand what you want, and what we want is respect, right?
Come and take a walk with me. Closer walk with these. See what only I can see.
Sisters, check this. Watch this.
Turn us loose, set us free from all the chains that bind me. Let us run in our own direction. Let us go, set us free from all this propaganda and lies that your people try to teach us. I know why would like to bring us down, because we have all the you try to tell us that our lives don't mean